Welcome to the show. I'm Scott Horton. This is the Liberty Hot Seat. My first night hosting. Thanks very much to Ian Chaffee for the great opportunity here. I'm very happy to do it. Radio at night. I guess I filled in for a radio show host on a nighttime show one time years ago, and I liked it. It's got a whole kind of different vibe to it, doesn't it? I guess I'm sort of a different person after putting up with this crap all day, you know? I don't know. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy that you guys have tuned in. I'm very happy to have you listening. I feel very privileged and honored. Looks like we got a chat room full of people right now at tinychat.com/talkingliberty. I'm pretty sure you can get there if you just go to libertychat.com. And guess what? Tom Woods is going to be my first guest on the show today. Thank you to Ian Chaffee for that also. Right on, man. Good old Tom Woods. You may or may not know, Tom is actually a good friend of mine. And also, I'm a big fan of his. So, well, here's hoping. Why isn't my toggle switch working? It's supposed to toggle between which computer my mouse is controlling, but it's kind of giving me lip here. Oh, here we go. Anyway, yes. Oh, I can turn off the sounds, he says. If I want to turn off the boop, I definitely want the boop off. Oh, I'm going to need the 8. All right. Cut me some slack. I just got here. I got to make sure that I can hear the boop in case there is a boop. I couldn't even hear the boop, but I am glad that there was not a boop. But anyway, good. Tom Woods will be here. Tom Woods, he wrote most of the books that have ever been published in human history. I mean, just barely, but still 51% of them. A lot of books. Tom Woods. So I could just pick, I guess, any of those books to interview him about. You know what I had in mind, actually, was his introduction to the betrayal of the American right. And the reason that I'm thinking along those lines is because it occurred to me that the slogan of Liberty Chat is bridging the gap between Republicans, conservatives, and libertarians. Well, there's some pretty big gaps there. But so if that's the theme of this site, then I guess I got to try to do what I can to turn a conservative to a libertarian. You know, if that's the gag here, that's what's going on. A right-leaning audience, if not a right-wing audience, anyway. And good. It's a tall order, but I think I'm up to it. I'm going to try. I one time gave a speech in L.A. to a pretty big crowd. Biggest crowd I ever gave a speech to, I think. And it was a very right-leaning audience. For some reason, it didn't occur to me that this is going to be a very Orange County audience. I was thinking it was going to be kind of an L.A. audience. But it was a very Orange County audience. And I'm not sure. I'm 90% sure that it was Adam Kokesh who came up to me after the thing was over and said that some conservatives, when I started off about foreign policy at the beginning of my speech, there were some conservatives in the crowd who crossed their arms and they didn't want to hear it and they thought I was a jerk and shut up and do I have to sit here and listen to this? Rah, rah, rah. And then by the end of the thing, they were nodding their head and they'd uncrossed their arms and they had to admit that I was right. Ah, dang it. But I made it easy enough for them, I guess. So, it can be done. I get emails like this from time to time. Former conservatives, former warmongers who understand a bit better now. So, I'm not saying I'm the best at it. I think Tom Woods is pretty good at it. In fact, he gave a speech at that same thing in L.A. that I did. And said some really great anti-war stuff there, too. But so I thought, you know, a little bit of a history lesson might be in order. Why would Tom Woods do such a thing as write an article or write an introduction to a book about the betrayal of the American right? He's a former conservative turned libertarian. Oh, what's his problem anyway? Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll try to make a little bit better of a libertarian out of some of you conservatives. See what we can. For the rest of this half hour, well, nah, not necessarily. I'm going to try to be quick. I have other subjects to cover before Tom Woods gets here. But I at least want to start out by trying to make the case, it is September 11th after all, that Ron Paul is right about how we got into this mess. And this is the kind of thing that conservatives really don't like hearing a lot of the time. But the truth is that Al-Qaeda, such as it was in 2001, it was a very small group of people, right? A couple of few hundred guys. The remnants of Abdul Azzam's old group that bin Laden had taken over, and some of Egyptian Islamic Jihad that had broken off with Ayman al-Zawahiri and went off and joined bin Laden. And these guys had said over and over and over again, not just their motivation, but even what their strategy was, their tactics, not just their motivation in general for considering themselves at war with us, but here's how we're going to do it. And it was all there in plain English, that the plan was to provoke the Americans into overreacting so that Al-Qaeda could reproduce the Soviet quagmire in Afghanistan with the United States in the place of the Soviet Union. And then by having an AK and believing in Allah enough, they would bleed us to bankruptcy and force our empire out. I'm trying to remember now whether Ayman al-Zawahiri deliberately, personally used the words Ho Chi Minh or whether that's just James Bamford paraphrasing them. But I think Al-Qaeda even mentioned Vietnam and talked about Vietnam, and that, you know, that was their goal, was to give us one. Just like, you know, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, who's, you know, kind of the Democrats' Kissinger over there. He at least claims that as soon as the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, well, first of all, he claims that he baited them, that he deliberately was already giving CIA support, Jimmy Carter was giving CIA support to the Mujahideen in order that they would attack the communist government and force the Russians to feel it was necessary to intervene. So I don't know if that's really true, but Brzezinski claims anyway, it makes my point even better if it is true, that Brzezinski claims that this is why he did it. He baited the Soviets into invading Afghanistan, and now we'll give them their own Vietnam, he said. Well, so that's what bin Laden said too. Well, I'll give you your own Vietnam again then, jerk. And then that's what he decided to do. And that was why the embassy attacks in Africa, and that was why the Cole, and there was an attempted attack on a destroyer before the Cole where the dinghy sank, but it was another one of those. And well, and really, you know, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's nephew, this is why that was Islamic Jihad that did the first World Trade Center bombing, and that, you know, was the same group that basically evolved into Al-Qaeda, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi Youssef's uncle, ended up becoming buds with bin Laden and joined that group, and then was the ringleader on the 9/11 plot, or one of them anyway. So, point being is this. They were trying to provoke you. That's how terrorism works. The action is in the reaction. And what they were counting on is that Americans would all want to go and bomb Afghanistan. As Michael Scheuer, the former chief of the CIA's bin Laden unit, put it, the invasion of Iraq to get rid of Saddam Hussein, that socialist infidel, as bin Laden called them, that was the hoped-for but unexpected gift. Wow, not only are you going to bleed yourself to bankruptcy, but you're also going to do regime changes in all the countries where I want them to, huh? Right on, said bin Laden. Thank you. So now, here we are still doing bin Laden's dirty work, pushing regime change in Syria and regime change in Iran. Zawahiri already, from whichever basement he's podcasting from, or, you know, third-story bedroom where he's hiding from his wives, put out his podcast saying all good suicide bombers go to Syria to fight against, you know, for Obama. That wasn't a typo, for America and against Bashar al-Assad. They would also very much like to see us get rid of the Ayatollah Khomeini and the Shiite regime in Iran. And then, you know, their whole plan was to bankrupt the United States, to, in the process, radicalize, as Scheuer put it, America is completing the process of radicalizing the Middle East that bin Laden had sought and failed to do for so long. He said that back in 2005. You think our situation's better now? In fact, look around, and you will see governments, American puppet secularist dictatorships falling and being replaced by Islamic governments. Now, Zawahiri has denounced the Muslim Brotherhood for a long time for being a bunch of crotchety old conservatives instead of a radical bomb thrower like him. But still, I bet you if you had asked him, he'd call it the Muslim Brotherhood a big improvement over Hosni Mubarak. And so America just continues to, bankrupt the home base of the empire, your neighborhood. They continue to radicalize the people of the Middle East. With no country accepted from that, I don't think, from Morocco to Pakistan, from Morocco to Iran anyway. Revolution, they've already got revolution, at least, half successful in Tunisia and Egypt. They got about, I would say, 1/4 successful regime change and the deposing of Saleh in Yemen. And, of course, they forced the Saudis to crack down hard in Bahrain. The Americans and the Saudis both did a great job co-opting the revolution in Libya and are trying to do the same thing in Syria right now. But all of this really just lends to my conspiracy theory, which is that George Bush and Dick Cheney were actually the secret agents of Osama bin Laden. And that rather than them hiring him to give them the excuse to go invade the Middle East, he hired them to implement the policy, the worst possible policy that they possibly could after their excuse was provided to them. They thought that they were too smart by half. They thought they were too smart, and they were by half, I guess. Sorry for screwing up the figure of speech there, but you know what I'm trying to say. And in fact, here's a fun one for you. If you like footnotes and stuff like that, go back and look at Rolling Stone from 2 years ago last month, August 2010. And there's an interview in there. And there's an interview in there with bin Laden's son. Not his terrorist son that the Iranians abducted for us and offered to turn over to us all those years before finally letting him go. But a non-terrorist son of bin Laden. A non-terrorist son of bin Laden who left the lion's den, that was their little hideout there in the mountains in Afghanistan, left the lion's den in the summer of 2001. And said, you know what, Dad, you've gone too far and I don't want to be part of it anymore. And he gave him the option, you're allowed to leave or whatever. And so he left. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering that right. But anyway, here's the important part. So here's one of bin Laden's non-terrorist sons, and he's meeting with a reporter from Rolling Stone at a nightclub in Damascus. This is before the revolution in Syria. Well, it's not really a revolution. You know what I mean. The mercenary CIA force there. Anyway. So he meets with bin Laden's son at this nightclub in Damascus, and bin Laden's son says, yeah, man, my dad, all he ever wanted to do was repeat what they had done to the Russians in Afghanistan. Yeah, we already know that, and we already know that Dick Cheney fell for it, because what a stupid idiot. And Richard Pearl told him to. Okay, good. We already know that, but what's better is, here's the best part. Bin Laden was excited when George Bush won out in the Florida recount and all that and was appointed president by the Supreme Court back in the year 2000. When bin Laden saw that George Bush and Dick Cheney were taking power, he said to himself, excellent. That is an anecdote that came directly from his own son, who said that he was very pleased. Why? Because these two wannabe pretend tough guys are going to be really easy to provoke, to manipulate, to control. Oh, they're so tough and powerful. Oh, they just know right what to do, don't they? And in fact, people like to say, the truthers like to say, oh, you think 9/11 was pulled off by a bunch of cavemen. Yeah, well, first of all, I think you're an evil, racist bigot. And second of all, I think that bin Laden was a billionaire's son with advanced degrees from the university. Engineering degrees, actually. And by all accounts, was quite worldly. I mean, I'm sure he had his ignorant points. There's no reason to think that he was just completely subliterate on the international politics level. He intervened to keep the Taliban from making an oil pipeline deal with Unocal and to make the deal with the Argentine company Bridas instead. Doesn't sound like an illiterate caveman to me. And I think it's at least within the realm of possibility. I'm not saying I know that this is true, but I'm saying I think that it's at least plausible that bin Laden had actually even read or had heard of the Project for a New American Century and their plan to get into Iraq come hell or high water. He may have even read Rebuilding America's Defenses that said, us evil pigs working for Ariel Sharon sure would love an excuse to go overboard. I'm pretty sure that's an exact quote out of there. But regardless, his son reports, and it's so honest. I mean, the way that they describe the son, too, he's no liar or manipulator or whatever. He sounds like kind of a pretty dumb kid. But he just had no problem recounting the story of how excited his dad was to see that the Republicans had won. There ain't no tougher tough guy than Prescott Bush's grandson, who bravely defended Texas from the Viet Cong during the big war over there in Indochina. Oh, yeah, and Richard Pearl, with the softest hands of any, little nerd boy ever to inhabit the Pentagon. And they said, oh, yeah, let's get it done. This will be perfect. This will be perfect. So I know everybody thinks it's just too perfect for the Republicans, that they must have deliberately, hired the Israelis to do 9/11 so that they could pretend that it happened to them or whatever. No. It's just as convenient. You ask who benefits, is even more convenient for the enemy. The great humorist Jeff Huber wrote a piece, would have been back in 2010. Nope. 2011, early 2011, no, spring of 2011. It was called Osama bin Laden, Dead and Loving It. And it was about just what I just told you, how Osama bin Laden and his group got everything they wanted out of their attack on the United States. They got exactly the reaction that they wanted, right down to that choking life, that federal domestic homeland security police state erected in the name of preventing that from ever happening again. And that was what he said. You can go find footage of bin Laden and Zawahiri in spring of 2002 on Al Jazeera sitting on a log. Zawahiri's doing all the talking, but they're both bragging about how, yeah, we did 9/11. How do you like that? And then that's one of the things that they say. I'm pretty sure that was where I got that from, the choking life. Yes, this is what you'll do. Either one, you'll get the message and you'll leave us alone, or two, you'll go overboard, and we'll finally bleed you all the way to bankruptcy and force you out entirely. And that's the story told by Michael Scheuer. And hell, what was it, 2006? I think it was 2006. Bin Laden put out a podcast, said, look, Americans, you tell poor guys all desperate at this point. Look, if you want to understand what this war is about, read Michael Scheuer. That's what he said. He said, read William Bloom, or is it Blum, and read Michael Scheuer. He's the former head hunter of me, said bin Laden. Read his book, man. He'll tell you what's going on here. And that's what Michael Scheuer says. Michael Scheuer says, and he's right, and you can go read at PBS NewsHour website. You can go read the declaration of war against the Americans occupying the land of the two holy places from back in 1996 and then again in 1998, where they announce, here are the reasons that we're attacking you. Bases in Saudi Arabia, and then the blockade and no-fly zone bombings over Iraq that are enforced from those bases in Saudi Arabia. Support for the Israelis in Palestine and in Lebanon and their permanent occupations there. The occupation of Lebanon only ended in the year 2000. Support for all of the Nazi dictators in the region from Morocco to, Iraq anyway, or to Saudi Arabia and Jordan. And pressure on them to manipulate the price of oil in the 1990s, of course, to keep the price of oil artificially low, so to help fuel the American economy at the expense. Well, and hell, what do they do with all their money? All the sock puppet dictators spend all their revenue buying up American debt, because that's the deal, and the people get nothing. And that was one of the complaints. And then the last complaint on the list was support for, and I think this is a bit overstated, but at least turning a blind eye and certainly not caring when Russia, China, and India oppress Muslims in their countries. Oh, America cares so much about human rights. Well, what about the Uyghurs in China? You don't care about them. Well, what about when there's a massacre of Muslims in India? You don't say a word to the Hindu government there. And what about Chechnya? Now, in truth, the American CIA was helping in Chechnya, at least somewhat. But still, the point was made that, you love, Muslims and everybody else so much, America, and that's how you justify all of your wars. And yet, and in fact, Scheuer himself told me this. We talked about this on the radio. Right after September 11th, like a month or a few months after September 11th, there was a massive pogrom in India where like 20,000 Muslims were killed. Like there was this horrible pogrom, like this massive, this bloody nightmare broke out. And George Bush's government, Colin Powell, our Secretary of State, didn't say a word. They didn't care one bit. And bin Laden said, see, I told you. They hate all Muslims, they hate us because we're Muslim, etc., etc. You've heard this shtick before, only mostly from the other direction. So these were the announced goals. Now, I'm not saying that anyone ought to take bin Laden's word for it. The guy's a murderer, so what's his word worth? If he kills civilians, his word is worth nothing, right? It doesn't matter what he claims his own motivation is. What matters is, what did he tell a young Muslim to make a young Muslim say, yeah, you're right, I should do whatever else you say? What does he have to tell someone to recruit them? What did he and his men say to Ramzi bin al-Shibh and Mohammed Atta that made them say, you know what, forget my advanced degree and my promising future back in Cairo. I'm going to war and I'm going to die in it. Good. What did he say to them make that choice? He didn't say, don't you hate Americans for being free and for living so far away and believing in Jesus or whatever. Muslims believe in Jesus too, dummy. That wasn't it. It was the foreign policy. And in fact, Michael Scheuer again said, you know, the Ayatollah Khomeini in the 1980s railed against miniskirts and against feminism and, you know, whatever kinds of progressive parts of, you know, culturally progressive parts of American society he was opposed to. And nobody cared. You think somebody's going to go be a suicide bomber over somebody else's daughter wearing miniskirts on the other side of the planet? They don't want to kill us for that. They never wanted to kill us for that. And I don't know, you know, who believes that anymore, really. But I think now that enough time has passed, that people can finally, you know, admit to themselves that, you know, there really was such a thing as the 1990s. And it is true that Bill Clinton slaughtered little Iraqi children every day for 8 years. He never stopped. That's all he did all day long, was drink the blood of the innocent from bases 100 miles from Mecca and Medina. Oh yeah, that did happen. I do remember Bill Clinton's mouth dripping blood from the children that he murdered unendingly for 8 years. You know, this quote, I like to take it out of context. She said this before September 11th, but, you know, did anybody give her a chance to revise it and see? You don't really still believe that. Do you, Madeleine Albright? Whoa, oh, wait, I gotta turn this off, don't I?
I mean, that's more.
Oh, no. Why is there an echo on that? I turned that off. Oh, well. I can't play my soundbite because for some reason it's echoing. Why in the hell is it echoing? If I turned off the audio coming from there... What if I turned off my mic?
We have heard.
Huh. Well, that's weird. It's got a weird loop. Ah, hell. Anyway, that's Madeleine Albright, Bill Clinton's Secretary of State, saying, yes, the price is worth it if 500,000 children die under the blockade, under the stated goal that this would make the civilians of Iraq so miserable that they would rise up and overthrow Saddam Hussein. Which no one believes that that was ever going to work, right? Nobody thought that. We saw what happened when they tried to do the Shiite and Kurdish uprising at George Bush Sr.'s encouragement, promising that he would protect them. And then when he didn't protect them and left them high and dry in the giant Bay of Pigs of the desert in 1991, what did Iraq do? What did Saddam do? He killed them all to death. Another 100,000 or so. Oh, yeah, but, you know, if only we make them starve, if only their children are dying of malnutrition, then they'll be mad enough that they'll do what? They'll overthrow Saddam? We're lucky Iraqis didn't do 9/11. It's amazing that they didn't. It's amazing we haven't suffered 100 more 9/11s at the hands of Iraqis after the crimes committed against them in the name of 9/11. That had, of course, nothing to do with them whatsoever. And you know what? What if I tried a different audio program? Because somewhere... Nah, too late. I got a great clip of Thomas Friedman, who is the leading public intellectual in America. He's the highest-ranking public intellectual among public intellectuals, which is just amazing, and which says so much about the United States right now. It's incredible to me. But Thomas Friedman explained to Charlie Rose what the war was all about, the war that he avidly supported from his perch at the New York Times, his most influential perch there at the New York Times. And it was about, we had to just kill a lot of Arabs just to prove how tough we were. And just to prove that if one person hits us, then we will kill a lot of other people who have nothing to do with it. So don't mess with us. Which doesn't seem like much of a warning, right? If you hit me, I'm going to go beat up somebody else. That's supposed to be a disincentive to you to attack now? I don't get it. And especially when that's exactly what bin Laden wanted. Just like he told the people of Iraq on the eve of the invasion. Rise up against the socialist infidel Saddam. And then also the Americans too when they get there, he said. But yeah, that was literally Thomas Friedman's explanation. Is we had to pop the bubble. There was a terrorism bubble where just like the value of houses in the neighborhood, there was a bubble in confidence of terrorists that they could attack America and get away with it. And so we had to kill, in his words, Thomas Friedman, anyone between Baghdad and Basra, whether a single Iraqi had to do a single thing with that attack whatsoever or not. But he just picks two countries around, and he says, we could have gone to Saudi Arabia. We could have gone to Lebanon. We could have gone to wherever. We had to go from Baghdad to Basra and say, suck on this. And that'll show those Arabs and pop that bubble. And you can find that clip. It's on YouTube. Thomas Friedman, the most celebrated, highest-ranked public intellectual in American life, there on the Charlie Rose Show, explaining why it is that he kills the people that he kills. All right, now it's time to interview the great Tom Woods, author of right around between 49 and 51% of the books that have ever been written in human history, including Rollback, How You Can Destroy the State. Welcome to the show. Welcome. You're my first guest ever, Tom. Good to see you, man.
I'm glad to see you, Scott.
Oh, no,
Congratulations.
I can't hear him. That's a real bummer.
What? You kidding me? You can't hear me?
I don't know if it's you or if it's me, bud.
Hold on. Wait.
Volume 100% here, it says.
Wait, they can hear me.
Well, these things happen. Nobody panic.
Oh, too
We will
loud.
see what
Oh, that was
happens
because
here. Let
I
me
was
see if I can play some audio
They didn't give me a chance to adjust levels.
from my own site here and hear it. Where's my little flash player? Oh, it's blocked. Well, I'm failing, Tom. Hang on a second, man. Apparently the guys in the chat room can hear you. I don't know why I can't. Please bear with me and we'll see. Okay, so I can hear this computer. Why can I not hear you, my man? It says volume 100%.
Yeah, did you try?
All right.
I keep talking to Scott.
Did I
He can't
mute the
hear
room?
me.
Oh, I did. I muted the room.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. I'm sorry. There's two different
Okay.
volumes, and I thought the one was the one, but the one is the both.
Scott, 50 years from now, when we're looking back on your 50-year retrospective on this show, we'll talk about this incident.
Yeah, that's right. This is how I started off my first interview on my new show. I completely botched it. See, they're cussing at me in the room there. What the hell's wrong with you?
Well, Scott, how come I can't see you? I mean, I just see like this microphone symbol. Well, get your mug on the screen here.
Yeah, I really don't like TV. I guess, if this is going to be my show from Tuesdays from now on, maybe I'll have to do that. But yeah, I'd have to wear a shirt with buttons and all this fancy stuff. And you know me, I like to get high during the show.
All right, look, Scott and I were talking earlier really quickly about what should we talk about tonight. And at the time, I was holding our 2-year-old, and we had 3 other kids running around, and my wife was away, and I just couldn't talk to him. So I figure you guys in the chat room, I mean, obviously Scott and I can just talk all day long like we're just on the phone, but maybe you guys have something you want to talk about, right? What do you guys want us to talk about? You give us a topic. It'll be like, Scott, this will be like improv.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I'm going to defer to them, and you pick whichever questions that you want. I would just say my one kind of subject, it's not really a formed question, but one subject that I would ask you about, because of the theme of Liberty Chat, that it's bridging the gap between conservatives, Republicans, and libertarians. And maybe I could ask you a little bit, one, about your former conservatism, and 2, about the book, Betrayal of the American Right, that you wrote the introduction to, and maybe kind of teach a little bit of the history of what used to be the right and what it is now, and maybe a little of the neocons, and then maybe some of these conservatives can stop following all these Trotskyites around like puppy dogs all the time.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. Before I do that, let me just, I want to give people a link because I don't know, half an hour before going on with you, Scott, let's see, I can't seem to get it to paste, however. It gives me the print, settings, global setting. I don't want those options. I want paste. It's not letting me paste. All right, maybe somebody else can do me a favor and paste. I'm not inept with computers, but could somebody do let's see, yeah, maybe I can try that. No, Control V. There we go. Thanks, guys. Okay, I just want you to see I made this video just like earlier today, and I just posted it. It involves Max Kaiser and me, and we don't have to talk about this now, but
play it right now, Tom. There's actually a way that I can play this thing right now, and the audience and you, and we can all watch it together. Would you like that?
Maybe some other time, but I feel like I don't want to waste 7 minutes of their time. Like, let's take our.
Right,
they can watch this
on.
afterwards.
Everybody's got the link.
Yeah, guys, yeah. Get a look at that because people are saying, how come I don't debate Kaiser? Well, I just laid out, here's how I'll debate him. I will debate him on a third-party show where he's not the one running the show, where it's both of us are on equal footing. Then I'd be glad to talk to him. And then in the second part of the video, my marketing sense kicked in, and I decided, this jerk has taken up enough of my time. I'm going to exploit what he's doing to me for marketing purposes. I'm going to market Liberty Classroom as the antidote to this guy, and I'm giving away free books in what I'm calling my Knowledge Beats Name-Calling book giveaway. So it's like, I learned from Gary North how to be a smart marketer. But anyway, we can talk about conservatives and stuff. I was actually pretty happy with this interview that just ran on C-SPAN with me over the weekend that I did at Freedom Fest. The C-SPAN interviewer, this guy Peter Slen, you can't tell what his bias is. He really doesn't betray any bias. He laughs at your jokes. He smiles at you. He asks you friendly questions. He's not a gotcha sort of guy. And he asked me about libertarians and conservatives, and I got to say an awful lot about that sort of stuff, and in particular about the Pentagon. And I was just thinking about my former ways, and I think there are a lot of people out there who were exactly the same way I was, which is that we grew up caught in this left-right kind of system, and most of us, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, I certainly wasn't original enough to break out of that box on my own. I just thought these are the choices. In fact, I didn't even think these are the choices, I better pick one. I just thought, I must be this. I'm obviously this. I'm a Rush Limbaugh guy. It never occurred to me that maybe there could be something other than Rush Limbaugh and Hillary Clinton. And it was a slow process for me, but it was just asking me questions about being consistent. Like if I really believe in, as I claimed as a conservative, I claim to believe in moral absolutes, and I claim to believe in stability and prudence and limited government and low spending and all this other stuff, and yet at the same time I was believing in this ballooning warfare state apparatus. I was believing in a semi-leftist view of spreading some kind of ideology all over the world. There was nothing. All my skepticism of government went out the window when it came to foreign policy, and I realized why is it that I've got this double standard? And then I started piecing it together. That, oh my gosh, I've been totally had by these jerks. And so little by little, I crawled and scraped my way over to libertarianism, and I tell you, Scott, I am so envious of these like 16, 17, 18-year-olds who write to me, and they've already read Rothbard on war, and they've already read all this stuff, and I feel like, my gosh, what I wouldn't give to have had my head screwed on, that tight and straight when I was their age.
Yeah. Well, I learned from a talk that you gave about Rothbard recently that you were exposed to whatever it was that got you moving over to libertarianism, you found the world's greatest libertarians immediately and learned from them. So for me, I was exposed, let's see, first of all, I had, right after the first Gulf War, I had George Carlin, right when I would have been picking left or right, I guess. George Carlin made it clear to me that I didn't have to be either one, because in Jammin' in New York, he does the whole first part is against the war, and the whole middle part is about aren't we all the same? And the whole end part is against liberals and Earth Day and pretended environmentalism that's just statism and whatever. And he is so clearly neither the right or the left in that one. That was kind of a great permission slip for me. But then when Harry Brown ran for president in 1996, it was like, oh yeah, because here's a guy who says, oh yeah, there's a giant corporation you hate, destroy them in the market, I'd love to see them fall too if they deserve to fall. I don't want the government to ever save them. So it wasn't like he was a corporate shill. And they asked him about what would you do about abortion, and he said, well, nothing. I'm running for president. I don't have any authority over that. And so, all right, I was into libertarianism immediately. I love this Harry Brown guy. But I didn't know that there was a Murray Rothbard until 2003. I didn't realize that there was all this real, like, high-level scholarship about libertarianism. I thought that anybody who was actually serious had that there's such a thing as Mises or the Independent Institute. I would have never imagined that there was any of that stuff until the time of the Iraq War is when I finally learned about all that stuff existing. So tell me a little bit about, you knew Murray Rothbard back in the 90s and things.
Yeah, I mean, what an unbelievable privilege, but I got to meet him in a couple times in 1993 and then a few other times in 94. And it was just what you would expect. It was just incredible. The guy was so smart. His head was like a walking bibliography. In addition to the knowledge he had, he also knew exactly what you should read on various topics. And he was just hysterically funny, and he laughed at your jokes, and he was genuinely interested in what the students had to say and what you were working on. I'm not somebody who tries to pick fights. I know people aren't going to believe me, but really, when I go after people, it's only because they started it. I don't normally pick fights, but I do want to point out that this is one area. People sometimes get upset if you attack Milton Friedman because, hey, wasn't he pretty good? And he was pretty good on some things, so I don't want to... Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, sorry, apparently my wife ordered some food. Hang on just a second.
Sorry.
That's okay.
This guy Woods, he'll get right up and leave in the middle of your interview. Well, here, I guess this is a good time to talk about all of the different books by Tom Woods that I have here. There's We Who Dared Say No to War, which he co-edited with Murray Polner.
I'm sorry about that, everybody.
And Meltdown. If you want to explain the business cycle to anybody, especially in contemporary economic terms,
light out there.
Meltdown, and they'll be Austrian business cycle theory guy for life. All right, go ahead. What?
Okay, well, anyway, I'm sorry about that. My wife thought I was out on the deck. Yeah. Right. So anyway, the long and the short of it is, yeah, I was going to say about Milton Friedman, right? Okay, he's a good guy, did some good things, all that. But some people get upset if you criticize him. But the one thing I want to criticize him for, though, is that he was notoriously unfriendly to students. Like, if you said something stupid, he would destroy you. Like, he was not a nice guy to students. Whereas Rothbard was exactly the opposite. Like, Rothbard is like at this level up here, and you're like a speck down here, and he wants to inspire any spark of originality or knowledge that he perceives coming from you. It's really, you know, it was a privilege, even in that short amount of time that I got to know him, and especially that night when, you know, I was just grilling him about all kinds of things, and I kept saying, all right, Professor Rothbard, this, that, and the other thing, and he kept saying, well, he finally said, call me Murray. I thought, yeah, you want me to call you Murray? You're Murray freaking Rothbard over here. So, yeah, he's great. And of course, I saw earlier in the chat, somebody was saying, the Internet allows me to get right to the heart of the best thinkers in this tradition right away. You know, whereas, as you know, you and I, Scott, had to stumble around and look around. You know, whereas today the Internet now is so developed and there are so many sources on everything that you don't have to do what we had to. I mean, I found out at the Mises Institute through a magazine ad. Like, nobody even reads magazines anymore. But it was just luck. It was sheer luck. Whereas today, all you have to do is type the word libertarian or Mises or whatever. So these kids don't know how you and I used to have it in the old days.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the only alternative media I had was like Covert Action Quarterly and books, of course. But other than that, it's the New York Times, pal. I guess I read the New American, too, the John Birchers magazine. But, of course, it was Will Grigg who was the best thing going on there, you know, month to month. But, yeah, I had no idea. In fact,
he was great. And then, of course,
there's a quote from Mark Thornton on the back of The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. And it says Ludwig von Mises Institute on there. But that just sounded so fancy to me that I thought it couldn't be anything I'm interested in. It just happened to be this one economist thought the book was right or something. It never occurred to me that I really needed to look into what is this Mises Institute. You know? It's called the Institute. Why would they agree with me about anything, right. You know? But it turned out everyone there is really
right.
Good.
It sounds, yeah, right. Of course, it's part of the establishment. Yeah, if it's got the word institute in it, it must be like the man or something.
I saw someone in the chat room talk about how funny it is how everyone talks about Murray Rothbard like he's an old uncle. Of course, I never met the guy. But my experience with Rothbard, and you know me as an economist, I'm a great anti-war guy, you know. But when I read his essays, you know, whatever Lou's running at LRC or something like that, and especially when I first started reading them, it was like exciting. Yes, exactly. Everything I already think, only better and smarter and way more well-written and with, you know, 100 extra points that I hadn't ever gotten around to thinking yet. But at the same time telling me exactly that my voice of reason going on in my own head has got it figured out, you know? It's just better. And in fact, like Wall Street banks and American foreign policy, that's like every John Birch conspiracy theory ever, only without any of the kooky stuff. And only the pure goodness, revisionist history of the Morgans and the Rockefellers and their interests in American policy in the 20th century as the builders of empire. No kooky stuff, no right-wing stuff, just pure Rothbard on the most important stuff, you know?
Well, one of the great things that he did, that the Mises Institute now published, he published this long, it's a monograph, I don't know, maybe it's 90 pages. It's called Wall Street, Banks, and American Foreign Policy. I'm sure you've heard of this thing. This was a long essay that he wrote for some obscure investment. Yeah, I mean, he wrote this for like some investment letter that was read by like 100 people. And he still went to the trouble of writing like a 20,000-word analysis, and then it was lost for years, like no one even knew about it. And then I think it was around the time of his death that they stumbled upon it in his papers and said, whoa, this thing needs to be published. I mean, he was always good like in his book America's Great Depression, his other historical work, at connecting dots. This guy is married to this woman whose family owns this firm and has this connection and this incentive and this interest. He put it together, again, without the assistance of the internet, just through sheer research and doggedness that just blows me away. And then I'm a guy who's been reading him for about 20 years now. And it's still that I can still pick up a new article by him that I've never read. And it's not a matter of, well, I've read most of what he's written, so I'm probably going to know what's in this article. Just this morning, I read Rothbard on entrepreneurship because of the debate going on the Bob Wenzel site, and I read Rothbard on it, and it was just filled with all these, brimming with these new insights that I'd never read from Rothbard before. And
Oh, looks like he froze up on me.
that was just in an article that well, you should appreciate and look into this guy because he's unbelievable. All this stuff. Now, by the way, Scott, let me say one more thing on this anti-war issue. One of my favorite moments ever as a public speaker occurred at an event that I was at with you out in Los Angeles. And we went to, where did we go, to Denny's afterward, I think? Or something like that. It was like 3 in the morning, and I could barely keep my eyes open. Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, that's right. That was Nullify Now Los Angeles. And that, no, I mean, I was under the weather. I had a cold, and I was tired, and you know, in my time, it was like 2 hours later. I was the last speaker, and it just was not ideal. And also, the room had, I saw people. I mean, you had potheads there, but you also had veterans with Operation Desert Storm hats on, and I was going to take 10 minutes in my talk to have a diversion into foreign policy. And I remember thinking, oh, this is not going to be good. I mean, I got all these, I had no idea there were going to be these war people here in the room. But I thought, well, what would Rothbard have done? Would he have said, oh, well, gee, there are going to be people who don't like what I have to say, I better not say it? I went ahead and said it anyway, and it wound up being, by far, the most satisfying talk I have ever given. I was so happy about it, and even the people who disagreed with me, I had brought them along on 85% of the speech, and so they didn't feel like they could jump off at the end. Instead, they sort of felt like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll have to think this over. It was exactly what I hoped would happen, and I still think about that. I think, you know, I'm never going to match that particular event, and I'm glad you were there for that, because it was so beautiful. I was so happy with how it went that I actually had the guts to do it that I'm not sure you would have believed me if you hadn't been there to see it.
Well, you know, I'm really glad to hear that you feel that way about it, because, of course, I thought it was great. Of course, though, you know, I gave that speech where I introduced you in New Hampshire, and so that's the two speeches. I've seen you on video a lot of times, but that's the two speeches I've seen live. And you're really great at speaking, man. I mean, you're so at ease, and you got your bottle of water, and you're cracking jokes, and this reminds me of another thing, but you always go back to your point. You never forget where you're at. I mean, you're really good. And so I wasn't so certain that that speech stood out that much to you. It certainly stood out to me, and I was actually just telling the audience about that before you came on, about that night and how I had changed some people's minds with my anti-war talk, and how you got up there and gave your anti-war talk, and now mine was all detail this, detail that, and the Israelis even did a study that said I'm right, and blah, blah, blah. And then, but you just got up there and said, you all know it's wrong. You know it's wrong. And they were like, I know it's wrong. I mean, that was it. And you just said, oh, yeah, if there was an earthquake, you'd cry your eyes out. But bombing them all to death is perfectly fine. Is that what people believe? I don't believe that. Not anymore. I'm not going along. And the whole crowd was like, you know what? I give up because my argument sucks. And, like, the one guy got me on the facts, and then this guy's got me on my conscience, and now what am I going to do? I mean, you just... You know, I don't know, maybe I set him up a little, but you sure knocked him the hell down with that.
I sure appreciate that. I mean, that's a really important 1-2 punch, and I hope we can get out to, I'd love to get out to L.A. again. I mean, we had a huge crowd, and it was a great, diverse group of people.
I should go on tour opening for you.
Look, I'd love to do a thing in tandem. The two of us, I think, would be absolutely great. I'd love to do that.
And, you know, it reminds me of this thing.
Wait, hang on one second. I warned these people in the chat room that this could be like you and me just having a conversation on the phone. And I think it's sort of turning that way, but that's all right. That's all right. Our phone conversations are awesome.
Hey, that's what I do, man. I talk on the phone for a living. It's fun. But let's see. I forgot what I was going to say, so it's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, we were just talking about the two of us being on tour together.
Oh, yeah, I know what it was. There's a great scene. It's in the book, but if you haven't read the book, watch the movie. It's the exact same thing as the book. Like, people always say the book is better than the movie. No, in this case, the movie is the book. Word for word, it's Malcolm X with Denzel Washington, Spike Lee movie. Great movie.
Really?
And there's one scene in there where Malcolm X gets up there and he goes, yeah, well, I got a shotgun. Rah! And the whole crowd goes, oh, my God, that Negro is so scary, you know? And then he comes and sits down, and Martin Luther King is next at the podium. And Malcolm X whispers to Martin Luther King's wife, now watch, they'll be eating right out of his hand. And so then Martin Luther King is like, you know, I think we really got to get rid of all of these Jim Crow laws tomorrow. And they're like, sure, just keep the scary guy with the shotgun away from us, and we'll do whatever you say, MLK. And so, I mean, that's it. That's you and me and the Hegelian dialectic, right? I'll be the radical that goes way out, and they're not sure they're buying that. And then you come and say, oh, it's okay. You only have to go 90% of the way to Scott, and you'll be fine. And then we'll change the world.
That's great. That's great. Let's grab a couple things from the chat, because somebody was asking about Thomas Zaz and
please answer about that.
Because the thing is that, well, I just want to say, I just want the people in the chat room to know, I am glancing at it, but I don't know enough about Thomas Zaz. I mean, I know what his argument is about mental health and about mental illness, and he just doesn't buy into the establishment view of it, needless to say. But and I know Ralph Rako has urged me to read him for years and years, and I just never did it. But on the Brandon Raub thing, he's that guy who, I guess they nabbed him because of things he said on Facebook, and now I don't know what the status of that is, Scott. I mean, I know that they're filing suit now against the authorities. Have they let him out?
I interviewed his lawyer on the show last week.
Okay, so where does it stand?
Well, they're still looking into it. I mean, he's out, and they don't have a claim on him anymore. What happened was it was some magistrate at the lowest level who signed off on the thing, and then some real judge came back to work the next week and said, what, are you kidding me, and let him out. And I think they had tried to move him from the local mental health lockup to the VA to get him away from his lawyer. I really wish I was better on this. Go back and it's the Rutherford Institute. John Whitehead is his lawyer. He wrote about it for LRC. There's an article at LRC about it.
That's right.
And there's more. But, yeah, basically, you know what it was? I don't know. I'm not trying to give any credit to the cops whatsoever. But basically it looked to me like maybe one or two of the statements actually sounded like a threat, but they were lyrics. If you just copied and pasted them into Google, you'd have found they were lyrics of a popular song. So then, you know, one cop freaked out, the other cops freaked out. They went and grabbed the kid. Then they had to make up an excuse to grab him, and they really had none. Oh, I don't know. This guy in the chat room's correcting me and saying, no, they knew they were lyrics. So in that case, they simply said they don't like the kid's politics, and they used, you know, some kind of insanity against him. And, you know, Rutherford, the lawyer, made me think he really was on to something, knew what he was talking about when he said this kind of thing happens all the time, Tom. Only difference here, especially to veterans, because they're scared to death of the veterans. You send them overseas, you teach them how to kill people, and then you bring them home all betrayed. The economy's ruined because all the money that got wasted on the killing of the people. And so how many more McVeighs did we just make out of our Iraq war veterans, that kind of thing. So the cops, it's in their reports. They're really nervous about veterans. And Rutherford was saying, or Whitehead from the Rutherford Institute was saying, this happens all the time. It's just that in this case, the guy's mom immediately got on Facebook and YouTube and whatever and got it out there. And someone put it on Reddit or whatever, and it became a big deal. And so the publicity helped get him a fancy, famous lawyer and all of this stuff. But that doesn't happen to all the other veterans that the same thing happened to the same day, you know? It's a really crazy thing. I mean, the way he was describing the rules is the threshold for saying that, hey, Tom, you know, 2 or 3 people agreed that you've got a real problem, and for the judge to just bang the hammer and have you locked in insanity prison, man. You know?
Well, it's one of these things where it's like they're. I don't want to suggest that this was part of some deliberate, overarching plan, but the fact is that if the state gets away with this and nobody really raises a stink about it, then they try to get away with other things. I mean, I think they've been trying to get. I think trying to get away with things has really accelerated over the past 10 years, and because no one does anything, I think the political class is frankly surprised at how little resistance there is to basically anything. There will always be people who, being good products of the government schools, will make excuses for the authorities, and they're just looking out for our good, and that was an antisocial person, so he needed to be punished. And the thing is that one of the merits of the people at the time of the American Revolution was that they were, as Edmund Burke put it, they were basically fighting against oppressions that, in many cases, hadn't occurred yet, but they were oppressions that they anticipated were likely to occur given the trajectory that the British government was on, and they weren't going to wait for them to happen. That's the exact opposite of our situation. We actually are waiting for them to happen, then they happen, then we still do nothing.
Right, that's the thing, is everybody, I guess, can imagine, or I guess they look back at Lexington and Concord like it was a big watershed, but I guess, you're the historian. It was only so much of a watershed, right? You still had to convince the Georgians to get on board and whatever. It was far from just a simple matter of all 13 colonies rising up in unison to declare their independence easy peasy like that. It was a big bloody mess, and it took years and years.
Now, Scott, I can't help noticing that somehow, is it the case that Hans Hoppe came out with a new book, and I missed it?
I don't know.
How is this possible? Hans Hoppe has a new book, and I didn't even know about it, and now I feel like a complete idiot. But
I didn't see that.
All right. So let's move on. Feeling like an idiot is not any fun. So no, I haven't read. I just thank you for telling me. I didn't even know that it existed. So thank you.
Hey, you know what? I don't know. Hey, are we allowed to go overtime here?
He knows, but I don't see him as much anymore. I didn't even know.
Hey, Tom, is there a show after this, or how's this work if I want to go over time interviewing you? Hey,
Liberty Chat, answer that question for us, please. Is that Ian?
Anybody
You can go over time. All right, well, let's go over like maybe 5-10 minutes, and then we'll just stop from there because this is my.
I don't want to do that. Well, anyone.
No. Liberty Chat here in chat window is the owner of the site. No show after you.
Okay. Well, hell, I'm going to keep interviewing you then. I want to ask you this. What do you think about Gary Johnson, Tom?
Yeah, that's an interesting issue, because in some ways I like Gary Johnson because, for instance, I'm very interested in state nullification, and he came to Nullify Now Orlando, and that's not something other presidential candidates would have done. He used the word nullify in his speech, and when he announced for president, that was one of the first things that the thought controllers at Think Progress said about him, was that, look at how dangerous he is, he wants to, tell the federal government not to do certain things. Isn't that unbelievable? So I give him credit for that. And, so I think he's taken some unpopular and courageous positions, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, I like him. I'm not an avowed enemy of the guy, but I don't love him. I feel like if you're going to have a libertarian party, then get out there and promote libertarianism. Don't say to yourself, well, I better only go 65% of the way on the drug war because I don't want to alienate voters. Any voter who's going to be with you 65% of the way is going to be with you 100% of the way. You've already alienated the voters with the 65%. And likewise on foreign policy, I want, especially in light of the absolute wickedness of the U.S. government's foreign policy, I don't want somebody who's going to say, well, I don't like these wars, but that one might be okay, or this one. I want just root and branch. Look, you people have been exploited enough by a government that lies to you about its foreign policy and gets you to wave the flags because they know you'll be suckers and do it, but I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to treat you like an adult, and, it wouldn't kill us for 4 years not to have any wars. It just would not kill us. How about that? Like, what is so hard about that? I don't want the fair tax. I don't want any of this stuff. I want repeal, abolish, smash. I want that pure message. And I want to strengthen, if we're going to have a libertarian party, that is the wing of the party that I want to strengthen, and I'm not convinced that Gary Johnson is the guy to strengthen that wing. Now, if that were to change, and tomorrow he just came out rip-roaring hardcore, I would change my mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm with you. There's an article, I forgot which one it is now, but where it's basically it's Murray Rothbard attacking David Friedman, and he's written this book, The Machinery of Freedom, The Utilitarian Case for Anarchism or something. And
Yeah, right.
Rothbard saying, "Gag me with a spoon, man. I'll take a radical minarchist, somebody like, say, Jacob Hornberger, right, who's a constitutionalist, right, but who hates injustice, who can't stand it, who wakes up in the morning to fight for freedom because, man, he's burning with it. That, a radical minarchist puts a conservative anarchist to shame when it's all just, well, gee, guys, you know, I don't know about I mean, and especially like on something like drugs. All of the arguments for legalizing weed count for heroin, other than you're afraid to say it. And in fact, heroin's a much better case because what are you, pro-AIDS? You drug warriors are the biggest cause of AIDS in the society. What are you, satanic? There. I won the heroin argument. What, was that difficult or something? I had to like cow and hide to come out and say legalize heroin? Of course legalize heroin. Why do you hate humanity so much? You want to keep it illegal. You're crazy if you want to keep it illegal. And the thing is about Johnson is I like him too, but his instincts are milquetoast. He doesn't have any... He might like liberty, but he doesn't hate injustice. He's not here to stop something bad from happening to somebody. You know, his statement the other day about the troops in the Middle East. Well, they're over there fighting for our freedom. When he should have taken that opportunity to say they think they're over there fighting for our freedom because that's what we tell them, but they're on a fool's errand and they're dying for nothing, and that's enough of this. And that was his chance to say it, and instead he went, oh, what am I supposed to say here? Oh, look at the little flag on my lapel, blah, blah, blah. You know? Makes me mad, because I like the guy too, but where's his spine?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I guess, I mean, it's, to me, I'm not interested in all this because I'm interested, because I find policy debates to be inherently interesting. I'm not interested in public policy. I don't want to read your position paper. I don't care about any of that wonkish stuff. I'm doing this and it enrages me. And I'll tell you, this may be idiosyncratic on my part, but the thing that most enrages me, I mean, of course you could say that it's the wars and all that stuff, and to some degree that's right, but I guess what fundamentally enrages me is that, you know, as the Austro-libertarians say, the political relationship, the relationship between the state and the people, is fundamentally exploitative. It is not a relationship in which the state is the wonderful provider and the people are the wonderful and grateful recipients. No, it is an exploitative relationship. And yet, these people, namely everybody who isn't in on it, are being exploited every day in ways they can't even count, and yet these very people defend their exploiters from criticism, they defend them from libertarians. They, you know, like when we're trying to convince them, look, you're being ripped off, they're making these third-grade arguments about how indispensable these people who are ruling over them are. And I guess it's that how they've captured these people's minds that enrages me the most, that I just can't sit here, let these people be ripped off and exploited and all this other stuff and have their patriotism be exploited on behalf of war and everything else, and their money be debased, and the business cycle, and all this, and yet have these very people be so clueless about what's being done to them that they're actually cheering for like one of the two establishment candidates in the election, instead of saying, all you people are my enemy.
Yeah. Well, now here's the reason that I know that you keep doing what you do. It's the same reason that I do. It's because you get responses from people who say, hey, yeah, you're kind of right about that. You know, I used to be pro-torture until you came along and changed my mind. You know, I get stuff like that, and what am I going to do? Stop? If some guy is no longer a torture monger. I mean, that was poisoning his whole being. His whole psyche was suffering from, in a, you know, a more religious sense. His soul was being poisoned, trying to come up with excuses for Republicans torturing people. And I told him, hey, you know what? You don't have to make excuses for that. Actually, torture is what barbarians do, and you don't have to be like that. And he said, oh, like for whatever reason, the way I phrased it that one time, that's one example, you know, and I know that you're the same way. If people go, you know what? And I see letters to Lou Rockwell, he posts on his blog like this all the time, things like that. You know what? I used to be bad on this stuff till you guys came along. So it's not like, you know, I don't really think, well, maybe you, but I don't really see a role for me to play in, like, really changing the world. But at least I want to try to be a place where people can go if they want the truth. That's all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's what you have to be. You have to be that person that if somebody really is honestly looking, you are somebody that they might find. Now, I like what somebody said here because people are asking in the chat, what would be worse, 4 more years of Obama or 8 of Romney? It'd be one thing if the public actually elected Romney, but if they re-elected Romney, like you would really just have to wonder what's going on. But I don't think there's much to choose between the two. But with Obama, you get 4 more years of maybe being able to make some inroads with some of these right-wing people. I mean, I know that you feel like it's hopeless. It's not always hopeless. Whereas with Romney, they go right back to sleep. Oh yeah, once in a while they'll hem and haw about he spends too much. But these people obviously don't care about spending. The Tea Party does not care about spending. That is obvious. If they did, they would act differently from how they do. So, and plus Romney, it would be a militaristic nightmare. And either way, the U.S. government is in a fiscal hole it can't possibly get out of. So both of them are in a really unenviable position. Like it's almost like if you really want to be president right now, it's almost like there's got to be something wrong with you.
Yeah. Well, clearly. I mean, these guys, they're just terrible. And you know what? As long as, we're talking all about the presidential election, how about that Ron Paul, huh? He sure did the nicest thing for America that anybody ever did for anybody. I mean, think about it, seriously. You go back to whatever ancient societies you studied or whatever it is you know about the world. You tell me where anybody ever did anything for anybody else that was as nice as what Ron Paul just did for everybody on Earth, which was go on a speaking tour for liberty again and give, dozens and dozens of speeches before tens of thousands of people, millions of people by way of the TVs and the YouTubes, preaching real individualism in a way where our arguments have never had a spotlight like that. Ron Paul's second presidential run. And so how about that Ron Paul, Tom? What do you think, man?
Well, I mean, he made sacrifices for us that I appreciate very much. He had a grueling schedule for anybody, but I mean, we should remember he's in his late 70s, and we all know he's in excellent physical condition, but that has to wear on anybody, what he put himself through. And he didn't have to do it, and he did it anyway. And no, it wasn't perfect, and yeah, of course there are things I would have done differently, and I would have fired those people and all that, but when push comes to shove, this guy told truths that were never popular. Well, it became popular, but he had no way of knowing that when at the time he told them. It's easy for Newt Gingrich to come along and say, hey, we really got to look at the Federal Reserve now that he knows you can get applause from that. Ron Paul didn't know he was going to get applause for his positions on foreign policy and war, and yet he took them anyway. And that's what's really admirable about this guy. I'm just going to tell you what I think, and I'm not going to weigh every single word. I'm not going to treat you like 7th graders. I'm not going to ask a focus group what issues I'm supposed to be talking about. I'm going to treat you like adults. Now, obviously, Americans don't want to be treated like adults. They do want to be spoken to in slogans. They don't want somebody who strays from the 3x5 card of acceptable opinion. But he gave a chance to real grown-ups. He was somebody that matured. You've got to respect that.
Tom, we had a little bit of skip in the stream there, and I lost you at, and that,
well, I'm sorry, it's gone, it's lost in the ether forever.
That's all right. Anyway,
but actually, yeah, if people are actually saying they hear crickets, that's right. No, it's not. Be quiet for a minute. That is actually a legitimate cricket sound you are hearing. I am sitting outside, and those are the crickets, right? So it's not nothing wrong with your computer. That's actual crickets.
Well, that was perfect. Your silence.
And in fact, there are moths out here too.
Yeah. All right. So
yeah, no, if only this were a screened-in footage.
I might as well ask you, Tom. What about? Nah, I really don't want to. I don't want to ask you that. You know what I want to ask you? Well, shoot. Now I got to think of a new thing.
All right. Well, let's do one more, and then I got to run.
Next. How about that?
All right. Well, in my video, I actually put Uh, yeah. In my video, I actually put a list of my events at the end of the video, and I also have it at I'm going to type it in. Here we go, because I want people to come see me. Yeah, most of these things are free, but this coming Friday, we got the Mises Circle in Manhattan, and that's headlined by David Stockman, who's that great truth teller on the Fed and the budget and the Republicans and all that. He's fantastic, and Lou Rockwell and others will be there. That's this Friday in New York City, and at night this Friday, it's the Ron Paul Freedom Dinner. I'm speaking at that. That's for free. Saturday, I'm in near Spartanburg, South Carolina. October 12th, Albuquerque, New Mexico. October, all of you to be there. And then October 24th and 25th, I'll be at the University of Central Florida and the University of Florida, respectively. And then finally, Pine Mountain, Georgia, October 26th. So there's your answer.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Good time to be had by all. I hope.
It's going to be great. Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
There's someone saying, come to South Florida.
Well, head over.
Right. Hey, it's up to you to organize it. You invite Tom. He'll come and speak to your group. That's the way that works.
Wait, hold on one second. I have spoken in Ohio a whole bunch of times. I spoke at Ohio State. I spoke at a big event that the Tea Party put on in Ohio. I spoke at the Nullify Now in Cincinnati. So you got to just check my website, and you'll find out that I'm going to be there. So TomWoods.com has all my stuff.
You spoke in Austin and you didn't call me. What's up with that?
Oh, in Austin?
Yeah.
That's right. Why was I? Yeah, that was extremely last minute, though, and we were in the middle of moving. So nobody was on my radar screen at that point. I was barely awake. So forgive me for that.
There you go.
All right, anyway, I got to get rolling.
I'm giving a speech in Madison, Wisconsin at the end of this month.
Excellent.
At the University of Madison. So, yeah, I'll come and talk to your group. I prefer if you give me money, but I probably will even if you don't.
Nice.
All right. Hey, man, so we're way over here. I should probably let you go. I didn't really give you a chance to talk all about the old right, but then again, that's a pretty big can of worms to open up. You think there are conservative Republicans who could benefit a little bit from a definition of what's a old rightist versus conservative versus a neoconservative, or not? Can you do it in a short amount of time?
Well, how about this? You have me back on the show, and we'll do the whole show on it.
Yeah, there you go. That would even give me a chance to prepare so I could ask real good questions instead of overly broad ones like the one I just asked.
Okay, that's great. Scott, always a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, of course, my friend.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night. And good night, everybody. Thanks very much for tuning in to my first show. Thanks very much for Tom Woods joining me. I hope it was entertaining. And we'll be back next week. I'm Tuesdays here. Tuesday nights from 9 to 10 Eastern Time. So thanks very much, y'all. I really appreciate it. My show is from noon to 2 on No Agenda Radio. Monday through Friday, less Thursday, but anyway. All right, see ya.